So I watched that new Batman flick that just came out, and I'm here to give my 2 cents. I thought it was pretty good. It was very well shot, edited, and directed, the story and character writing were fairly on point, and it was just an overall really solid movie. Not too much to complain about. Would I say it was the best Batman movie? No, it definitely wasn't the worst. What's strange to me, and something I really wasn't expecting, is that this movie is oddly kind of divisive, and I won't pretend I don't get why. I know a lot of people found it kind of boring. I mean, it's a slow-paced detective noir film featuring Batman, and to some people that's not worth sitting in a cramped theater seat holding in your piss for 3 hours. Personally, I didn't mind. In fact, I liked seeing more of the detective element and Detective Comics. It's DC's namesake for a reason, but most of the Batman films I've seen, aside from the Dark Knight trilogy, haven't really shown that side of Bruce Wayne. The side of him that's supposed to be Sherlock Holmes in a bad Travis Scott cosplay. So whatever, I was expecting a slow burn story focusing on Batman solving a murder mystery, and that's exactly what I got, so I really won't complain. Again, I get why many people found it boring. You could definitely feel its runtime toward the end there, and if that's your problem with the film, then that's totally fine. I've also heard complaints like there are a lot of contrivances or whatever. I don't really know about all that. I mean, the only thing that really felt like that to me was the part where he meets Selena Kyle, because if he hadn't met her exactly when he did and followed her to find the exact person he was looking for, he would have hit a hard brick wall in his investigation. And I've seen people say that that was a little too convenient, which, I mean, sure, yeah, that's fair. It was pretty convenient that he ran into her right when he needed to, but that's not the same thing as a contrivance. A contrivance is when something happens unnaturally in a story when it shouldn't be possible for that thing to happen, but it has to for the rest of the story to work. Bruce meeting Selena wasn't impossible, so I'm more willing to overlook it, even if it was conveniently timed. Anyway, if we're getting complaints out now, I will say that I felt the pacing in this movie was a bit off. Like I said, it's pretty slow, and there are definitely points where you can feel the length of this film. It doesn't hinder the movie too much, at least for me, but I did think about 15 to 20 minutes or so could have been trimmed to make it a little more watchable. I have a lot of patience for movies that I feel should take their time, so I won't gripe too hard here, but yeah, I might have done things a little bit differently. I also really don't like that the Joker was teased at the end. The more I've thought about it over the past few days, the more I've decided that this just wasn't a good decision. I understand that Batman and the Joker are like two sides of the same coin. You can't really have one without the other. And just like how Joker showed a lot more of Bruce Wayne than I was expecting, him showing up in this universe eventually only makes sense, but I just wish that they had done it a little later. Because it's blatant sequel baiting, and one of my favorite things about this movie is how self-contained it manages to be. But other than a few really small nitpicks, there isn't much about this story that I don't like. And even some of the other complaints I've heard are things that I personally really enjoy. Like the fact that in this version of the story, there's a whole lot of Batman and not much Bruce Wayne. A lot of people are saying that there should have been a better balance between the two, and I disagree. That was one of the points of the movie, if you ask me. This is a Bruce who is still very new to being Batman. The film says he's only been at it for 2 years, and I really like that he hasn't fully mastered it yet. He's still not great at balancing this double life, and realistically, he shouldn't be. I'm particularly thinking about the Nolan films, which I just rewatched because of how much I enjoy this movie, and in those movies, Bruce has a lot of trouble keeping up with two lives too. It also just seems very apparent that this Bruce doesn't care very much about keeping up appearances. As he states, he doesn't see Wayne Enterprises as his parents' legacy, he sees the Batman as that. I love that he goes about this film trying to use his power to inspire fear in his enemies, but he sees that it's not really working and he's not sure why. He's on a quest for vengeance when he should be on a quest for justice, which is what Batman is supposed to be all about. And by the end of the film, he realizes that he can use his power and influence in other more effective ways to make the city a better place, rather than just beating up bad guys. He'll still fight criminals to protect innocent people, but he also comes to realize that he can just as easily inspire hope. I just really like that this is a realization he has to naturally progress to. While I'm talking about Bruce, I should go ahead and mention the amazing performance that Robert Pattinson put on here. I know a lot of people had their reservations about him going in, but after this movie, I don't want to see another single tweet about the sparkly boy from Twilight. I think we can officially say he has shed that skin. Pattinson has been in a lot of other great films, of course, but I'm glad this movie exists, if for no other reason than for him to finally start to step out of Edward's shadow in the the eyes of pop culture. And of course, he's not the only actor doing a great job. Edgar Wright as Jim Gordon is fucking amazing, and as many other people have already said, Colin Farrell just about stole every scene as the Penguin. Like I said earlier, this is kind of a different style Batman movie than we're normally used to, with it taking a heavier focus on his detective side. I think this was the perfect idea, and Matt Reeves does an incredible job bringing this to life. He's quickly becoming one of my new favorite directors, and I hope he'll get more popular now that this movie exists. And again, barring that Joker reveal at the end, I can't tell you how much I respect his decision to keep this story as self-contained as possible. He's gone on record multiple times now in saying that he doesn't want this story to tie into any larger cinematic universe, and while he left things open for possible sequels, it's something that stands completely on its own. That is such a rarity nowadays. A lot of movies in the last several years, even the ones I really like, can't reasonably be enjoyed in a vacuum in and of themselves. Everything has to be a sequel or part of some larger universe. And don't get me wrong, I want a sequel to this movie. In fact, I think I heard something about HBO Max spin-off shows already in development, and I'm excited for them. I'm just glad they weren't intentionally trying to build a new universe. Especially since DC already has one, and while it got off to a pretty rocky start, it's still just so sad to me that they seem to basically want to sweep it under the rug and retcon the bad stuff, rather than embrace it and build something better off of it like Marvel did with their universe. Another reason why I appreciate that this film exists is because it can sort of ease casual audiences into the idea of two live-action continuities with the same characters coming out at the same time, which bodes well for The Amazing Spider-Man 3. Now, I've gone on record in saying I don't like those films, and I still don't. No Way Home didn't retroactively make them better for me, and I will always say that they're bad, but it did make me really want to see that franchise continue with better writing going forward, so hopefully this movie will speak to the higher-ups over at Sony. Oh, I almost forgot to talk about the Riddler. Super underrated villain who hasn't gotten the best representation on the big screen, but I'm glad that he was the main villain of this film. I can't think of a better member of the Rogues Gallery to be a foil in a Batman whodunit than the one whose literal only superpower is his brain. All in all, just a really solid film. Again, not the best Batman film. My recent rewatch of the Nolan trilogy reaffirmed my belief that there are at least two Batman movies I would rank higher than this one, but it's still pretty good. I don't necessarily agree with people saying it was a masterpiece, but maybe I'll change my mind upon rewatching it. I definitely plan on seeing this again soon, because the story is pretty complex, and it's hard to really break it all down and analyze it having only seen it once. And I think that at times this film uses that to its advantage by sort of distracting you with the mystery so you'll overlook a fair amount of the dumb stuff. There's one scene in particular I'm thinking of where Batman just caught Penguin in a drug bust with a dead body, chased him through the city, and caused multiple counts of property damage and probably killing a lot of people in the process. And then he and Jim just interrogate him and then walk away. They don't arrest him or anything, and I didn't even really notice at first because I was so focused on the piece of mystery they'd just figured out. Which means it's just as possible that my feelings about this film will only get worse upon rewatch, but we'll just have to wait and see, won't we? For now, I'll give The Batman an 8 out of 10.